Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, which is a joint collaboration between Tech.mt and MCST. The webinar is on research and innovation, opportunities for SMEs and startups. I thank all our panelists. Today, we are privileged to have with us CEO of Tech.mt, Ms. Dana Farrugia. Also, Senior Director at MCST, Engineer James Foden. And we also have somebody from industry here who will be sharing their experience. I welcome Mr. Brian Ferris from Scope. And I would like to welcome you and thank you all registrants for joining us this morning. And I hope that what we have prepared for you will be fruitful. So thank you once again. So basically, my name is Giselle Kaleya, and I am the Senior Executive here taking care of public relations at MCST. And today I will be your host. Today's topic will be, as you are possibly already aware, having Tech.mt on board, we'll be focusing a little bit on the digital aspect in terms of Malta and where we stand. During my preparation for this webinar, I kind of was a little bit impressed myself, not coming from the sector myself, with a stat that has ranked Malta the 5th out of the 28 EU member states in the Digital Economy and Society Index. Now that to me is quite impressive. And I believe that this is a positive aspect. But of course, as in every situation, there's always room for improvement and, going forward. So I guess today's motivation for this webinar is partly also that. So just a brief intro about MCST, who is currently ramping on its stakeholder engagement efforts. It's an opportune time since MCST has a number of research programs which are being improved and others which are being added. As you might also know as well, the government has appointed a ministry specifically for research and innovation, and MCST falls directly under the MRIC, which is the Ministry for Research and Innovation and the Strategy for Post-COVID-19. So for us at MCST and also nationally, that is a great step forward. As I already mentioned, we have Tech.mt, and today, and of course, Ms. Dana Farrugia will soon be sharing with us her reflection on prioritizing funding opportunities and the digital sector. After that, we will move on to a presentation by Dr. Engineer James Foden at MCST, who will talk to us about the funding programs that MCST has. He will primarily focus on the Fusion program, but he will also delve into some other funding opportunities that you might find interesting. And then finally, we'll be moving on to Mr. Brian Ferris from Scope, who will be sharing a case study with us. This company has benefited from funding by MCST, and it's always good to learn and to share what other people have been through, and perhaps you who are here today can take with you some tips and some points. Then we will be moving on to a Q&A session, and we do encourage you to pose your questions. You've got the experts here, and I'm sure they will be able to answer your questions. But before you will all leave today, we've done a little exercise, and we will be carrying out a poll exercise to help us as well understand how we can improve better in our services. So we do ask you to take a bit of time to fill in this poll. But I will be going through this as we go along. So basically, that's it from my end. And I would really like now to introduce Ms. Dana Farrugia, who has quite a lot of knowledge in terms of her background. And I was reading her bio and her extensive bio. She's been involved quite a bit, and she's into focusing on AI, blockchain, IoT, cloud services. She's been in the telecoms industry, and she is now obviously heading Tech.mt. So I will leave it in your very good hands, Ms. Farrugia, to be able to share with us your thoughts today. Thank you.
Good morning, Giselle. Good morning to the panelists and our audience. Thank you for being here with us this morning. Let me start by giving you a bit of a background about Tech.mt. Basically, Tech.mt is a public-private partnership that was established between the Government of Malta and the Malta Chamber of Commerce to promote the national strategy for technology and innovation. So basically, we are responsible for growth, for sectorial growth in those two areas, technology and innovation. We promote the sector locally and abroad through promotional activities that span between initiatives, and we try to also bridge the gap between digital divide in Malta, because we believe that no one should be left behind. And it is important that we upskill our society as much as we upskill our workforce. We also have projects that aim to tackle this area. And also we focus on initiatives and incentives, the ones offered by MCST, in order to inject into industry the right funding and investment in order to explore ideas, in order to introduce in our country innovative solutions through research. We also work very closely with both academia and the industry, and we try to ensure that our educational system is aligned with what the industry needs. And this keeps us very much active with the industry and also with the educational system. And this is why we are here today as well. Through feedback that we receive from our sectors, there is the perception that maybe not much assistance exists in relation to research and innovation in our country. However, through this webinar, we will see otherwise. We also offer our assistance to foreign tech companies wishing to set up or relocate here in Malta. And we also propose to them these kinds of incentives, and they prove to be very popular and motivating for an investor that would be considering to internationalize and obviously choose Malta, because there are the right skills, the right resources, the right researchers, and the right ecosystem within our economy, including incentives like these offered by MCST. And finally, we also help local companies navigate through the industry. We help them scale, we help them internationalize, and we provide a platform through which they can network. And this is very important. We have seen through the pandemic how challenging networking has been, and it is thanks to technology that we could keep in touch and keep business going. And this is something that we have been pushing for the past year and a half, the importance of digitalization, the importance for businesses to have a digital presence. And research and innovation, of course, although one might think that it is quite a challenging area. However, the activity in this sector has continued during the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And I can confirm that on our island, a lot of activities and a lot of business has started during this year within this remit. Business that is flourishing, industries that are researching diverse topics on our island, from DNA to forensic related activities, to IVF, agriculture, maritime. Mm-hmm. So we are blessed with resources and the right ecosystem to be able to handle this influx of innovation. And we have the right platform for research to happen here in Malta, and also the right funding like this one again, offered by MCST, which is very helpful for a startup, for example, that is in its initial phases and is starting to consider to form a group with a common aim and a common topic for research.
Mhm. This is really great news. I mean, we've all been through this pandemic together, and it's really encouraging to see that, you know, all this activity is happening. As for myself, I have been seeing some big drones flying over fields and have been wondering how has, you know, the sector, the farmer, we know the farmer being, you know, perhaps stereotypically somebody who mightn't have a certain level of education, for example, which is completely wrong. But I have been seeing, you know, farmers who are digital people, young people, and this is really encouraging. So my question to you, Dana, is why has Tech.mt felt, you know, the need to organize this webinar once all this is happening already?
As I was saying, Giselle, we engage with many businesses on a weekly basis. And one of the most common concerns in the sector is that although locally the appetite to innovate is strong, research and innovation investment, especially for smaller businesses, can be very costly and can hinder companies from achieving their goals. And despite all the help that is available, some people are still not aware of the tools available at their disposal, like these types of funding offered by MCST. Therefore, Tech.mt felt the need to organize this webinar jointly with MCST. And from here, I would like to thank everyone involved for the open and forward collaboration that you have showed towards our idea to put forward these initiatives and to shed light on the various funding opportunities that the researchers or companies looking to drive research and innovation in the tech sector can avail themselves of.
Right. So this brings me to another question of understanding now what is the status of the digital sector in Malta? Where do we stand? How are
well,
we?
earlier you have mentioned, Giselle, that we have ranked 5th out of 28 EU member states in the Digital Economy Society Index. That does not come easily. I mean, through years of investment, our country along the years has invested a lot in our physical infrastructure. For example, we can provide high-speed internet over more than 99.8% of our island. We have various data centers across our island for people who want to invest in research and innovation and want to protect their data. That is very important. We also have high redundancy because of the multiple internet cables, data cables that we have that connect us to the grid. So investors can rest assured that in one way or another, if there is a data cable cut somewhere, they can keep operating because operations are shifted to other data cables. They do not end up disconnected.
Mhm.
And also in the European Innovation Scoreboard, Malta has ranked among the 5th countries with the largest increase in innovation performance. This as well, years back, governments have realized that there needs to be more focus and investment in innovation and in research. That is a given. Obviously, it is always a matter of budgeting. It is never enough. Budgeting is never enough that is allocated to the sector because obviously the more you invest, the more you will discover and the more you will create through innovation and invention as well. We also have a national digital strategy, which has expired last December, and we are currently working on a new one. So the government is working incessantly in order to keep our digital sector very much alive and healthy and also very much competitive. This is something maybe we do not appreciate. We have a digital economy that is highly competitive compared to our collaborators and neighboring countries, and both in the EU zone and also outside of the European Union. The fact that we are bilingual, for example, we can communicate with most of the globe. That facilitates trade. It also facilitates initiatives like research, for example, where communication is extremely important, and innovation in order to explain your idea or your concept and be understood. We are also connected to the rest of the world physically by various means. Obviously, COVID again has put physical traveling a bit on the back burner. However, we have managed to keep connected to the rest of the world thanks to our infrastructure. This is something that maybe we take for granted, but other countries, the moment that the pandemic struck, they have ended up disconnected from the rest of the world, because the moment they started working remotely, they might have experienced lack of connectivity in the area, in the remote areas where they lived. In Malta, we do not have that problem. Obviously, our geographical size is to our advantage. Sometimes being small is also an advantage. We also have a very active culture when it comes to the use of digital tools. We have an active culture when it comes to the use of mobile telephony, latest applications, the use of online shopping, e-commerce, for example. And on the other hand, when it comes to the digital economy, it is not only about consumers and about purchasing or consumer behavior. It's also very important to have the right research in order to attract innovation and to have innovation flourish and be incepted from our island. Our educational system provides very good researchers, statisticians, and we would like also to make an appeal for those who are thinking of pursuing a career in research or in statistics or in any STEM subject, in order to pursue that career, because it can really change the world. It's a career that touches humans, human lives. And this week is also Women and Girls in ICT Week.
Great.
So we also would like to encourage more girls and more women to be active participants in this sector. And we believe that our digital economy, our digital sector is well structured in order for us to be highly competitive in the globe.
Fantastic. In fact, as you might be aware, MCST also runs Esplora Interactive Science Center. And here what we do is we really try to instill this element of curiosity, especially at a young age. So, the uptake of science subjects when it comes to STEM careers, hopefully we'll see a change, because sometimes these subjects are perceived as difficult subjects, but in reality, if you catch them young, the basis is always much more attractive, and hopefully what you have, pointed at, maybe in a few years, we will be seeing more researchers hopefully coming up and now, more into digital. So you've already touched a little bit on the encouragement of this side, but if there are any companies out there who are currently looking, into research and into innovation, especially when it comes to funding, what would be your message to them?
My message to everyone out there is to make use of these funding opportunities and see them as an enabler and an opportunity in order to drive innovation and change the sector, with the vision to continue shaping the Maltese digital ecosystem as an important pillar of the economy. And finally, I would like to urge those seeking our help to get in touch with us or directly with MCST, and our professional team is always here to help them in whatever they may need. We believe that funding is a golden opportunity. We have seen funding as a means of investment in companies, helping them to grow and scale exponentially. And we are giving priority and importance to businesses and directing them to these types of assistive tools. And this is why we work hard and we work closely with other government organizations, such as you mentioned, Esplora as well, such as MCST, that offer funding to enable us to better guide you businesses in the right direction. And I would like to also emphasize that there is no one-size-fits-all solution. I encourage them to speak to us because the solutions and the funding that they may need is specific and tailor-made according to their needs. And I hope that we will see many ideas coming to fruition thanks to Fusion, R&I, and the Space Research Fund as well that MCST offer. And I now leave the stage to the capable hands of Dr. James Foden to tell us more about the schemes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Farrugia. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be participating. I think as the CEO of Tech.mt, Dana, if I may, said, it's always fantastic to see two governmental entities working together. And here we have the expertise of Tech.mt in the digital sector and our expertise when it comes to the provision of funding opportunities. And it is really important that the private sector does not remain idle, embraces change and embraces that change through research. Just as a really quick introduction before I start sharing the slides, the private sector often comes to us and says, oh, but it's really hard to get access to the funding, we have to fill in application forms and all that. Yes, I mean, there are processes to follow, but it is not that hard. The private sector has participated in our programs and in other programs offered by other entities. Hopefully, Brian and Neville later will give you hope in terms of the possibility to access such funding. But do come forward, we offer a lot of help. There are processes to follow, but if you don't give it a go, it's always going to be hard. So please do come to us for support. At this point, I'll start sharing the screen. I have been introduced to the session, but just as a bit of a further introduction, I look after the technical units within MCST. We have quite a broad remit. Today, I'm going to be focusing on the remit of the provision of funding. What I did want to do is focus on a couple of our programs, but also wanted to highlight some others. In fact, the presentation will be focusing on the programs depicted by the two top left logos, Fusion, the R&I program, and the National Space Fund, but we do offer a lot of other funding opportunities. So if you want to learn more, do come to us because there are very relevant opportunities. For example, a bilateral fund that we have open at the moment with China. We work with our counterparts over there to create collaborations between Maltese entities and Chinese entities under the Sino Malta Fund, and that is actually open at the moment. I'm not going to go through all this text over here, but this is just to give you an idea of the amount of funding programs and assistance schemes that we have at MCST. We have 17 in all this year. Moreover, I will also touch upon opportunities on the Horizon Europe. Although this is European funding, we do also provide assistance to access European funds. This is a bit of a Gantt chart with the call durations for a selection of our programs, and the ones which are depicted through logos over there are the ones I'm going to be talking about today. We will be sharing the presentation after this session, so don't worry about taking notes, but do be aware that we have a number of calls open at the moment, namely the Research Excellence Program. We have the Infectious Diseases Program as well, which is open. The National Space Fund will be open shortly, and as I mentioned, also the Sino Malta Bilateral Fund. So just starting off with Fusion first. Fusion is our flagship program really at MCST, and it has been running since about 2014. However, this year we've made some significant changes which should also be interesting to you as stakeholders from the private sector, and more specifically also within the digital sector. In fact, the changes have been such as to try and introduce a broader range of incentives, a broader range of funding programs to support different approaches, thematic driven and bottom up, as well as support across a broader range of what we call the technology readiness levels. So last year we piloted the Research Excellence Program, and this year it has formed part of Fusion. In fact, as I mentioned, the call is open. This targets early stage basic research that is bottom up. We also have the traditional commercialization voucher program that is going through changes at the moment. The technology development program, which then also provides access to other support schemes such as business plans, registration of IP, support on investors meetings. We do have also plans next year for a market ready or closer to market research program. As of this year as well, we have started special programs that are themed top-down research programs, and the first one this year will be the infectious diseases program. So just starting off with the first sub-program I wanted to talk to you about today, that is the Research Excellence Program. First of all, who can apply for this? Most of you on the webinar today would be members of the private sector. The good news is you can apply for this Research Excellence Program, and you can apply on your own. The scope, as I mentioned earlier, is bottom-up early stage research. So the type of research you would be doing here is either fundamental research or industrial research. Early stage research, it's important to note that. The funding available is up to 50,000 euros. The research project duration is expected to be relatively short, up to about 1 year. These 50,000 euros are available for the private sector under the de minimis route. The de minimis route allows governmental entities to provide aid to organizations up to a limit of 200,000 euros over a rolling 3-year period. So particularly for this call, the de minimis route is very advantageous, especially for those who haven't benefited from funding like this before, because we also apply a 90% aid intensity for private entities. So there's only 10% you need to fork out on your own over here. The eligible costs are various: personnel costs, specialized equipment, we pay for consumables, travel, and subcontracting. The TRL scale that we're targeting, again, this is early stage basic research. So we're talking about from TRL1, which could be just the conceptualization of an idea, up to about TRL4, whereby you are validating your ideas in a laboratory environment, in a non-representative environment, early stage research. After the Research Excellence Program, you can certainly move on to tap into the CVP, the Commercialization Voucher Program, which I will talk about shortly. Or as from September, you'll also be able to go directly to TDP Lite. So moving on to the Commercialization Voucher Program. This section of Fusion is not about performing research, it's about understanding the feasibility of your ideas prior to engaging further in research. In fact, what we do is we don't let you run off on your own on this. We pair you up with approved service providers that can provide you expert advice on intellectual property checks, as well as other feasibility activities such as research on the market you are targeting, for example. Who can apply? Again, it's similar to the Research Excellence Program, and US private entities can definitely apply. As I said, the scope is testing your ideas in terms of the feasibility prior to further investing in research. The funding available is around 20,000 euros, again, under the de minimis route. The aid intensity here that we can provide is 75% as of this year. So there are 2 stages. One is an intellectual property check, and the other is the commercialization check. So 2 stages. We've improved this over previous years to be swifter. After the commercialization voucher program, you can tap into the technology development program, and that is where the research happens actually. So under the technology development program, you would need to form a consortium between you as a private entity and then pairing up with a public entity or a public research, knowledge and dissemination organization, such as the University of Malta or MCST, for example. So the scope here is a bit different. It's collaborative applied research, which would last typically between 1 and 3 years in duration. We've upped the funding amount this year, so one can access up to 300,000 under the minimis route, which I mentioned earlier, or even under the general block exemption regulation for those who have exhausted their options under the minimis route. You will need to tap into the commercialization voucher program before accessing this. But I'll tell you a bit more about that later. Eligible costs, again, are rather varied, but it does depend on the state aid regulation that you follow. Here, the research is between TRL 4 and TRL 7, so we're talking about more of the applied research now, whereby you're advancing your preliminary prototypes and getting closer to the market. As I mentioned earlier, you can also tap into a range of support measures that we have to better prepare yourself to go to market. This is interesting, particularly for the digital sector. I've not got much detail over here as yet because we're still designing the scheme and we still require the approvals, but we're hoping to launch a light version of the technology development program around about September time. For this, you will not need to go through the CVP route and you can access this funding program directly. Here, the project funding would be smaller. It would probably be around 100,000 euros. You can participate on your own. There's no need for a collaboration. And we're looking here at supporting more of the fast-track technology development projects. So typically a year or 18 months in duration. So this could be very interesting for all of you. And we expect to launch this round about September. Again, it's about applied research, but you will also be able to tap into some of our business advisory type of activities that we can support you on. Now I'd like to touch on to the National Space Fund. Before I do that, I just wanted to mention that we are going to be hosting an information session, both on the Research Excellence Program and the Infectious Diseases Program, which I haven't talked to you about today, but there are some digital links there as well. This is going to be on Tuesday, the 27th of April at 1 o'clock. Visit our website news section to register for this event. So moving on to a bit of a more unfamiliar subject for some, let's say, the National Space Fund, but I wanted to explain how this is relevant to you as digital stakeholders. This Space Research Fund under National Space Fund, we have worked upon this together with the European Space Agency, and the idea is to incentivize research in the use of satellite data and the use of Earth observation data to overcome everyday societal challenges. Here, you can apply as a private entity, as a public entity, or as a research and knowledge dissemination organization. We have two research streams. Stream 1 is the lower TRL levels, and Stream 2 is the higher TRL levels. The funding available is up to 150K per project. The great news is to incentivize the private sector to engage further. There is no co-financing. If you go down the minimis route, we'll give you 100% of eligible costs, or you can also opt for the cheaper option. So what can we do with satellite data? We can do a lot, actually. We can do a lot because the applications are various. One can look at atmospheric monitoring, such as air quality. One can be looking at maritime applications, land monitoring. We mentioned agriculture and farming. One can use drones, but also couple this with satellite data. We can use satellite data for cultural heritage, climate change applications, and also emergency services. These are some examples, really, just to try and make the subject a bit more approachable. Using satellite data, you can, for example, on the top left-hand corner, track oil spills from vessels. On the right at the bottom, you can see the tracking of vessels that were accumulating, for example, prior to entering the Suez Canal, after, as you know, the blockage that we had in terms of maritime traffic over there. We can use satellite data to also observe issues created as a result of incidents. For example, the Mizip wildfire that happened recently. In fact, we can observe through satellite data before and after images, before on the left and after on the right, to evaluate the extent of the damage. This is absolutely different. It's an absolute game changer as compared to having people physically over there and not seeing the bigger picture. So satellite data does open a lot of opportunities. And here, again, you can see the vegetation index difference between a typical summer and spring, for example. So the thematic areas are rather various, and we have in fact funded many different types of projects since 2018. 2021, again, will be a bottom-up approach, as long as people are making use of Earth observation data, satellite applications, we will support that. This slide is to encourage really people in the digital sector and the ICT sector to get involved, because these projects do rely on ICT competencies, for example, in AI and machine learning, to really access the data, manipulate the data, and present this data in a usable and applicable format, really, so that then scientists and engineers can come together with the ICT personnel to really bring about societal challenge transformation. So the ICT sector is really important over here, because the skills within the ICT sector lend very, very well to Earth observation applications. Now, briefly, just to mention, move away from the national funding and mention the opportunities under European funding. We also have a team of national contact points at MCST to help you access Horizon Europe funding. Do come to us with your questions, with your ideas, so that we can align you to funding opportunities under Horizon Europe. There is a particular work program on digital industry space, and this covers a range of topics from manufacturing to materials processing to circular industries, robotics, AI, and also Earth observation. This work program has 6 destinations, and all I wanted to do is flash up a couple of slides for you that are relevant to the sector that we're discussing today. These are the destinations that are more aligned to the digital sector. That's destination 3, which is about data and computing technologies, and you can see the topic deadlines highlighted on the slide. There's destination 4, which is more aligned to the fitting of digital technologies to the Green Deal. And there's destination 6, which is more a human-centric approach to digital and industrial technologies. I don't expect you to remember all this, and that is why we have the national contact points who can help you navigate through the work programs. Another reminder, I mentioned it earlier, the Decino Malta Fund. There is a specific pillar for digital technologies on the Decino Malta Fund this year. The call is actually open. It says call opening soon there, but we've opened it a few days ago. So do approach us for opportunities for bilateral research funding. Finally, I'd just like to mention our Plumtree portal, which is very useful for you to be kept up to date with research funding opportunities. So do register. On the top hand right, there is an icon for you to register there to keep abreast with opportunities, not only from MCST, but also from other entities. And also I'd recommend registering on our mailing list. There is a top right hand icon over there, which will allow you to receive mail shots if you do register with us. Thank you very much. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much, Dr. Engineer James Foden. I know we will be opening the floor later to the question and answer. However, we do have a question which you might be able to address. It's coming from Ms. Caroline Bolduc. Ms. Bolduc is asking, what about Eureka Network? Does MCST put money into it? If so, how much? And can Maltese companies tap into this network as well as in addition to Horizon Europe? Sorry, I'm reading as kind of trying to connect speech with text. I hope you got the question there.
Yes. When it comes to Eureka and Eurostars, it's actually Malta Enterprise that looks after these programs. Do get in touch with us. And what we'll do is we'll pair you up with the relevant contact point at Malta Enterprise, who is very helpful and will be able to give you more information.
Fantastic. So, James, I did introduce you very, very briefly in the beginning, but of course, there is much more to say about your involvement here at MCST. James has been working here and he has over 7 years local experience in working with both public, academic and private entities across R&I thematics. So, it would be a good idea to pose your questions to James. I'm sure he has a lot of information to share with you. And what I also wanted to mention is that he has also held research management positions within the private sector in the UK. So he is now transferring that knowledge here. And I've also mentioned that he is an engineer. So thank you once again, James. And from engineering, we will be moving on to accountancy, I would say, because I'm about to introduce our next speaker, who is Brian Ferris. Brian is a managing partner of Scope, a local company. Yes, what can I say about Brian? An accountant. He's been an accountant for 10 years and he's been passionate about finance and other business. He wants to help finance and other business professionals when it comes to technology. Of course, he will be able to tell us more through his presentation, which has been prepared. Both Brian and Neville, who is also here as a panelist, but who will not be speaking today, have benefited from an MCST funded program, the Fusion program, precisely with the project Data Dear. We have, as MCST, already announced the results of this project, and Brian has gladly accepted to share this experience with us. I will leave it up to you now, Brian. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. The first thing I'd like to share is something that James referred to as well, is the application process and sometimes how daunting it may seem for some people. And we talk about the application process and how onerous it is. However, I think we don't speak enough about the advantages of such a program. And one of the advantages is helping you guys organize your thinking, articulate it properly, and come up with a plan. So that is something which I don't want to underestimate because it's extremely important towards the success of the project. So I'll be sharing my screen. Please just give me a nod, Giselle, when you can see my screen.
Yes, I can see your screen. And if you could just share with us, I have just a question from one of the participants today. Is everybody okay with the sound? Can you all hear sound? Yes, okay. So that's on. I will write just in case Naji cannot hear me.
Thank you very much. So I'll continue with my presentation. Good morning again, everyone. So what I'd like to share with you today is our experience of the Fusion program and how this helped us transform an idea into a successful and tangible product. So a bit about us first. So Scope is a born in the cloud IT solutions partner
I don't mean to interrupt you, Brian. I'm very sorry, and I don't mean to be rude. However, I have had some other messages saying that your sound is low. So I kindly ask you perhaps to project a bit closer. Maybe we can hear you a little bit better, if that's okay with you. And maybe perhaps have a better, louder voice if possible. Thank you.
I think this is better. I just adjusted the microphone settings. Is this better?
Yes, I can hear you much better. That's for sure.
Very good. Very good. So I'm gonna share my screen again.
Third time lucky.
Very good. So can you see my screen?
Yes, we can, and hear you loud and clear too.
Thank you. So I was explaining scope, and this is just to give some context. Established in 10 years ago in 2012, an IT solutions partner, and the role of scope has been to research and implement and support a number of. Allow me just a second. Yeah, can you see my screen now? Because it got stuck for a while. It should be okay now, sorry.
Perfect.
So Scope's role has been to research, implement, and support a number of different cloud applications. And it is through this involvement that in 2015, we have identified a gap in the market, and that gap actually brought the realization of DataDear, a cloud app that empowers finance professionals. But before I'll talk about the product, I'd like to walk you through a little bit the approach we have taken to actually build the product. So number one, I'd like to focus on the audience and understanding the audience and how important that is. Pick an audience that you understand, an audience that you can relate to. In our case, we focused on the finance community, and eventually we grew and adapted our tagline to empowering finance professionals. So that's an audience we could understand. Number two, what are the current solutions that exist? What's the current state of play? In our case, this was a software project, so it was important to understand different types of technology that existed, different solutions that existed. And that is what brings us to the opportunity. Usually it's a problem you're trying to solve, right? I'll also touch a little bit on how Fusion helped us in terms of flow, approach, process, challenging our thinking, etc. So I'm going to start with the audience. So we identified our market. Our market was going to be the finance professionals, and we looked at the different roles that they had. So there was a role that finance professionals played around compliance. There was a role that finance professionals played when it came to reporting value, reporting performance in an organization. And there was a role that they also played when it comes to creating and enabling value. And this third pillar is the pillar which in reality could be improved. And this is the feedback we got from the market, from research. And we wanted to understand that if we want to focus here, what can we do? How can we help to bridge this gap, right? So we looked at the areas that will help them grow. Again, more research. So we understood that the finance professional wanted to be more customer focused, understanding the business, not just a bookkeeper behind the curtain doing tricks and nobody's understanding, what this guy is doing. So that's very important, being closer to the business. Number two, mindset, being open to change, right? And driving change sometimes. Number three, investing in skills. And also, last but not least, becoming digital and data-driven. Okay, so, and we decided to focus on this last pillar because we also believe that this is a catalyst for so many other changes that need to happen. So how do we become digital and data-driven? Again, research reveals, and we looked at cloud adoption, and we found that accountants, finance professionals believe that technology and cloud adoption is key for their profession, is key for their improvement. Most of them go on saying that in the coming decade, understanding technology is as important in their profession as understanding accountancy, right? Yet we looked at the cloud adoption rates and we found that this is still extremely low. If you exclude countries like Australia and New Zealand, who are quite pioneers in this space, the rest of the world was hovering around the 20%, slowly improving, but still relatively low. And this is where we look at the adoption curve and kind of benchmark where we are at right now. Okay, this is where we are at right now. So how can we help them become digital and data-driven? That's the question for us. That is the focus for this particular audience. So we looked at current solutions. Okay, what is the current state of play? What are the different cloud technologies or different technologies that exist? And we decided to focus on cloud accounting ecosystems and two particular ecosystems that were leaders in this space. One of them was a platform called Xero, which also has hundreds of apps that connect to it. And another one was a platform called QuickBooks Online, which is another platform that has hundreds of apps connected to it. These jointly have millions of businesses today and growing, utilizing their service, their platform. And they are both rich in terms of a marketplace of apps. So they nurture this marketplace of apps. And sometimes we also hear this notion of there's an app for that. And we asked the question because we were close to the market, but is there really an app for everything? And through our experience at Scope, we felt that there was a gap in the market, and that is where we're going to dive into now the opportunity itself, right? So this is the risky part. This is where you're going to start to challenge the status quo. This is the dare piece, okay? So talking about daring, you know, Henry Ford once told us, if I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. Right? So this is where we have to, once again, dare ourselves to think differently. So this is where we set two platforms jointly hosting millions of businesses worldwide and growing with a number of connected apps. And then we had a previous traditional world without apps, a world dominated by a spreadsheet pretty much and dominated by Excel, which also has its value. And we asked the question, is it an either or? What if it wasn't? What if we found a way to connect these two paradigms? So we utilized thinking that was already applied in the past, but adopted it to a different world, a different reality to 2012 or 13 at the time. And we found a way to reconcile these two. And this is how the Data.mt tool was born. So allowing the traditional to inhabit the new, connecting these two worlds together. So we built a rich templates library that allows users to interact with their cloud accounting data. Here you're just seeing a snippet of the tool in action, where we're pulling data from a cloud accounting software and pushing it back in or editing the data that already exists there in a controlled manner. And we're also allowing users to unlock the data in the cloud accounting software, share meaningful information, retain efficiency, also not losing flexibility, right? So today, Data.mt has grown into being present in 30 countries and more as we speak, and trusted by more than 10,000 organizations already and growing. So putting Malta on the map, you know, we referred to this earlier today as well, putting Malta on the map as a trusted player in the software as a service space, you know, in the tech software as a service space. I'd like to talk a little bit about our Fusion journey and how this helped. So just looking at it over a period of 4 or 5 years here. In 2015, this is where we focused on the audience, identified the area, shaped the idea, and came up with a vision. In 2016, we built our first minimum viable product, And we also started the commercial voucher program, which helped us tremendously. So in our case, there were steps like the feasibility check, like IP checks, those helped. But I also recall a particular episode with one of our consultants at the time who challenged our strategy, challenged our thinking, where we were at the time thinking about widening the audience, and they challenged us to think in terms of depth as opposed to breadth, right? So to zoom in as opposed to go wide. And with hindsight today, because we had actually chosen to pursue that strategy, it is a decision which we are very happy with, right? 2017, we actually went through the technology development program. We partnered with the University of Malta, who helped us during the research phase as well. And in the forthcoming 2 years, we continued the technology development program, concluded our work packages, and obviously now the product has taken its own life and journey. So I hope I have given you some food for thought. Remember, every journey begins with a single step. And the question for you is, what is your next step going to be? And I'd like to leave you on a lighter note. One of my favorite quotes from Bill Gates: most people overestimate what they can do in 1 year and underestimate what they can do in 10. So have patience, come up with a plan, and start step by step. Thank you very much. If I can be of help, feel free to reach out. I'm willing to share our story in more detail as well. I'll pass over to my colleagues, and whether there are any questions, Giselle, I'm happy to answer.
Fantastic. Well, Brian, I think the participants today will tend to possibly agree with me. Thank you very, very much for this great presentation. I think there's no better person to present a technology to do with accountancy any other than a passionate accountant person, I would say, like you, and combining the digital sector as well. You have presented it very seamlessly, and I would imagine that perhaps, not everybody would find this easy, especially in the sector. Perhaps people would have been used to certain traditional ways. Moving out of that is possibly not so easy for everyone. And the way you've painted it, in my eyes, you've painted it very seamlessly. And what you've created, especially on an international network, I think this deserves a real round of applause. Well done. Thank you. And I hope whoever is with us today can be inspired by you guys like you and the work that you have done. Of course, also together with us, there's Mr. Neville Mikalev, also another managing partner from Scope. And, this work, I can say, has been really fantastic. And here at MCST, we are very proud to have had you on board.
Thank you, Giselle.
Right. Yes, we will now move on to the Q&A part. So we will open the floor shortly to whoever would like to pose a question. But before that, I really would like to bring up the poll that I mentioned earlier. I know that it won't take much time. This would really help us and help yourselves as well, people who would like to apply for funding in the future. So if I could kindly invite and ask my colleague Matthias to perhaps share the actual slide first, so that we can give an overview of the questions, the artwork that we have, to make it easier for our registrants to understand what they will be sharing. Is that possible, Matthias? If not, we can just go ahead with the quick poll. So
the polls are coming up right now because I launched the poll itself, but the artwork will come up soon.
No problem. So in that case, once we have the quick poll here, we can start with the first question. Were you aware of the funding programs presented today? So you can go either yes, some of them or no? And then the second question would be, has your organization ever participated in externally funded research projects? If so, how? So I see there is a 0 bracket, 1 to 2, 3 to 5, and 5 plus. 5 and more, that would be. So I'm not sure if we can move on to the next question, or are people still voting? So I'll be guided by you, Matthias, to bring up the next question. Further to today's event, are you likely to apply for one or more of the funding programs presented? Further to today's event, are you likely to apply for one or more of the funding programs presented? Yes, not sure, or no. We'd hope that it would be a yes. And question 4, would collaborations with a public or academic entity be beneficial in terms of your organization's research ambitions? Collaborations with a public or academic entity beneficial in terms of your organization's research ambitions? Yes, maybe, sometimes, or no. Okay, and then what project duration best suits the research needs of your organization? We have here 6 months, 6 months to a year, 1 to 2 years. And what barriers to participation have you experienced or foresee in any current research related projects? So we've got various options here. The funding programs are still not clear to me. The presented programs do not address the needs of my organization. I do not have the time, expertise to develop an application or a proposal. Recruitment for human resources to undertake the project will be problematic. My organization does not usually engage in research, and the financial incentives are not sufficient to generate interest in participation. Lastly, would you like MCST to contact you after the webinar? Yes, I have general queries about the funding programs. Yes, I would like further assistance on the application programs. Yes, general, or simply no. Great. So we really do thank you if you have taken the time to answer the questions to the poll. This would be really beneficial for us to understand, the needs, especially of the private sector, and how we can better help and facilitate and such funding programs which are readily available for the public to use. So if you've managed to fill that poll, I would now say that we are ready to take your questions and answers. I can see that 21 out of 39 voted. Thank you very much. This is, we really do appreciate. So yes, now I would like to open the floor for you to ask any questions. Please feel free to ask, whatever from the presentations that were delivered. Maybe you want to ask Brian, who has just shared with us his experience with the funding program and the success of the funding program. Maybe I can start with one myself. Brian, we were hearing that Malta has, this appetite towards the digital sector. I mean, there's this appetite, but then again, you kind of you showed that statistic, and you found out that only 20% were using it. And how does the cloud software relate to this? If I may, without any perhaps repetition, but just.
I think Dan also referred to earlier that we rank, and also you mentioned this, Giselle, we rank relatively high in terms of digital adoption in the EU. And a big part of that, in my opinion, is related to the fact that, and this links to cloud software in a way, because large enterprises always had access to technology somehow, because they had deeper pockets, they had funds, and they could benefit from technology.
Mm-hmm.
What changed with the cloud software is that that same enterprise level of technology has become available to an SME. And in Malta, we obviously know the stats when it comes to SMEs, and this is why perhaps Malta is a perfect ground to develop tech applications for SMEs, because we understand that market extremely well. So I think, again, our size and our, profile as a country rank us well when it comes to talent. We're an extremely resourceful population, and the technology now is also allowing us to, tap into different pieces that weren't available before, but this technology now became accessible.
Thank you very much, Brian. Okay, since I do not see any questions coming up, I'd like to probe a question to Dana. In your introduction, you mentioned that Tech.mt experience initiatives, but perhaps maybe in particular, can you share with us what sort of initiatives does Tech.mt offer to startups and small businesses? We might have some audience here who might benefit from your intervention, if possible.
Okay, the type of assistance that we offer at Tech.mt is mainly focused to tech companies, startups, students, people who maybe have an idea that they want to develop in terms of technology or technology solutions, development, scaling, and even to people who have a technology, an idea related to technology, a business idea related to technology, but need the skills in order to develop it. We act as the guiding arm for these different type of needs, and we assist accordingly. Obviously, we offer an array of services with regards to assistance, and as I always say, each request is very specific and different. So I encourage everyone who would like to explore more how Tech.mt can help them to reach out to us and contact us, and we can have a discussion and see how we can help them according to their needs. But if I can mention a few, we assist companies to apply for funding, we assist companies or students or people with ideas in relation to technology in order to find the right partners. Maybe as well, sometimes we also guide them where to find the right investment for their ideas, be it funding, be it private investment, be it banking, be it more incentives at Malta enterprise. We offer this kind of assistance. So it would be better if we had a chat with the people that would like to explore more assistance through us, and we can assist accordingly then, depending on their needs.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dana Farrugia, CEO of Tech.mt. I do have a question here being asked. However, I do understand that you need to leave as you have a further engagement just after this event. So I would kindly ask Ms. Nika Levikov to get in touch with Tech.mt via their socials, and you will definitely be able to get an answer. The question that is being mentioned is it possible?
I mean, Giselle, if I can interject, I understand the question was related to the MedClim accelerator offered by MCST. We have recently as well joined forces with MCST to offer funding related to ideas, technology development ideas in relation to more climate-friendly solutions. So if there are any startups, any businesses who have ideas related to solutions that would help us with having a better environment, a more climate-friendly output and processes, or any type of solutions that can help our environment, to reach out to us, because we can also put them through to MCST, but MCST are offering this type of assistance as well when it comes to this specific topic, climate change related solutions.
Thank you very much once again for also being so generous with your time to also answer Nika Levikov. So I can perhaps, on behalf of the rest, allow you to leave the meeting. However, before we do close this webinar, I would like to turn to Dr. Engineer James Foden to see if he had anything further to add, any other, to what has already been mentioned for the benefit of the participants here today. And I also would like to thank, I know you, Dana has mentioned earlier, she has thanked MCST for being able to organize this webinar. I would like to thank our executive chairman, Dr. Jeffrey Pulicino Orlando, for helping us in this respect of encouraging us to work in close collaboration with Tech.mt as well as with other entities. So I give the floor to you, James, if you perhaps can give us a last word before we close this webinar. Thank you.
Sure, no problem at all. I can see two questions in the Q&A really quickly. With regards to CVP, we are expecting it to open in May. There's not a specific date as yet, because it depends on approvals, but do register on our website and on Plumtree, because you'll be notified straight away as soon as it is open. With regards to early stage accelerator programs in Malta, we do not offer specific programs for specific sectors, because we incentivize research across all thematics. But as I mentioned, the Research Excellence Program is particularly dedicated to early stage research. However, when it comes to accelerator programs such as those that had been offered by META in the past, perhaps what you could do is send us an email, and then I can work with Dana to try and find some advice for you in terms of what's being planned on the horizon. Apart from that, really there's not much else to say. I'd like to thank Dana Farrugia, the CEO of Tech.mt, for this collaboration. I'd like to thank Brian and Neville for an excellent case study, which just goes to show that one needs to try to access the funding. It might not work the first or the second time, but it's definitely an investment, because when you do attempt to reach out to such funding opportunities, you're learning from them, and it will position you much better for future access to either national or European funding. So thank you, everyone. Thank you to Giselle as well for hosting us, and do get.
Thank you.
Very glad. Thank you.
Great. So thank you very much. Thank you to all the panelists. We know that they have a very busy schedule. Thank you so much for being with us. As James said, it mightn't be easy at the start, but just like researchers do, they do not find their answers straight away. They don't give up, but in the end, they do get there. Thank you so much. And please do not hesitate to come forward with your questions on our socials and websites, and any other method. We can still answer a phone call, whichever way you prefer. Thank you very much. And I really wish you all a great day. Bye-bye.